German industry lost tremendous market share. I think there's no other way than battery electric vehicles. Germany is suffering a lot of fundamental issues, over regulations, high labor costs, very high social standards. Consumers are skeptical, politicians are skeptical because they fear the loss of jobs. It is an existential crisis.
Combustion engines are back in if Germany gets its way. The government in Berlin now pushing against the EU ban on combustion engines that's set to begin in 2035, saying that hybrids, range extenders, and even synthetic fuels do have a role to play in decarbonization. Andreas Herrmann joins me now from St. Gallen University. Andreas, welcome. I want to ask you up front, could this idea to slow this march toward battery electric only vehicles actually help save the German car industry?
Yes, thanks for having you. Yes, I think so, because the German automotive industry needs more time for transformation. The combustion engine is not just a part of a car, it's the ultimate competitive advantage of the automotive industry in Germany. And obviously, this industry needs more time to develop new areas, new parts for competitive advantage.
Okay, we'll get into the details in just a moment, but I want to begin by asking, how serious is the situation for this industry? Maybe help our viewers understand. We often hear that sales increase sometimes, they go back. Why is this time more serious than others?
Well, the German automotive industry was very strong on the Chinese market. And over the last couple of years, the German industry lost tremendous market share. And the Chinese manufacturers not only stay in China, they come over to Europe. And these two developments simultaneously put a lot of pressure on the German automotive industry, though the industry overall is in a very critical situation.
We're seeing that through profit warnings, through job losses, for example. I want to ask you, is this an existential crisis for some of these companies, potentially?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes, it is an existential crisis because it's a fundamental transformation. And we know that the combustion engine consists of 2,500 parts, the electric engine of only of 200 parts. That means it's not only an existential crisis for the car manufacturers, but also for the many suppliers in Germany. We have many thousand companies in the southern part of Germany, and they all have to think about a new business model.
This deal at the EU level to make all new car sales zero emissions beginning in 2035, it was agreed on several years ago. Its focus was really climate. Obviously, the industrial situation has gotten worse and worse. If we look at the climate side of this, the government in Berlin says we still want to stay on this path. We just want to sort of loosen the path there to 2035. Couldn't car makers, however, just continue building combustion engine cars, saying that, for example, these technologies like e-fuel, synthetic fuels, will save them, and then move away from making attractive battery electric vehicles? Is that the danger in this kind of agreement?
Yeah, I think in the long run, battery electric vehicle will definitely dominate the market, and all German car manufacturers are well aware of that. But obviously, they need more time for this transformation, and there are some technology which will help them to master this transformation process. Synthetic fuel can be one way also. It's very energy intensive, so you need a hell of a lot of electric energy to create synthetic fuels. We have this idea of range extender. We talk about hybrid models. Those are very different technologies out there which help mastering the transformation process. Although at the end of the day, we will see electric vehicles. I'm very sure about this.
I want to ask you about those synthetic fuels. We hear a lot of different things from different sides. The government, parts of the government in Germany, as well as parts of the industry have said, hey, this could really be something. On the other side, critics say this is just a way to keep the combustion engine. You say it's energy intensive to make. I've heard that in the long run, then it's actually really energy inefficient. Is this a real solution, do you think? What do experts see when they look at these fuels, or is it just a kind of excuse?
I think it's a solution for niche markets. For example, for race cars, it's a solution. It's also a solution for the airline industry because battery are too heavy for airplanes. So we will definitely find areas where synthetic fuels will contribute. But for the mass market in the auto industry, it's way too expensive. It's way too energy intensive. We will definitely see a long-term switch to battery electric vehicles.
I've been confused by listening to car makers on this issue. On the one hand, they say they want clarity from the government and a clear direction, and that they've invested great sums into battery electric vehicles, and they don't want that kind of progress scrapped. On the other hand, they also want something of a return to combustion engines, but at the same time as they're pursuing batteries. Doesn't this make the issue really confused for them even more if they're building both models, pursuing both models at the same time?
Yes, it is to some extent confusing, and it's even more confusing when we go back 3 or 4 years, because all German manufacturers enthusiastically signed this commitment to switch to battery electric vehicles. But it turned out that many consumers, especially here in Central Europe, are very, very skeptical about battery electric vehicles. So the sales are not really going up. Or significantly going up, and also the issue of charging stations. We do not have enough charging stations in Germany, so it's a kind of a mixture of everything. Consumers are skeptical, politicians are skeptical because they fear the loss of jobs, and the car manufacturers see that their core competences, that their competitive advantages are about to disappear. It's a very delicate political situation.
To what do you attribute this consumer skepticism in many markets towards battery electric vehicles? Is that the fault of the car makers for not producing attractive models? We see in China, for example, that they are gaga over electric vehicles in many ways. Why is that not working in other markets?
Yeah, I think it can be explained with what we call the innovator's dilemma. The Chinese car manufacturers try to address very new markets, especially people who had no experiences with combustion engines. And here in Germany, the manufacturers went to the well-established customer segments, and these segments are very, very conservative. Think about the Porsche Taycan, kind of the top of the line product. And Porsche tried to establish this electric vehicle in the most conservative segment of their clientele. And that's all against the ideal strategy for inventing a brand new product. You go normally with such a brand new product to not established clientele, to a very brand new segment, and I think that's probably one of the mistakes the German industry made.
You mentioned the lack of charging infrastructure. We hear about that a lot. If we're now talking about a return to combustion engines in some sense in the coming years, would that not take a lot of the motivation away from these companies and the government to really push for that infrastructure to be created for battery electric vehicles?
Yes, my favorite path would be to go through this crisis and come out with pure battery electric products. Such a compromise, which is now on the way, could lead that the transformation process is slowed down. Yeah, I'm totally with you. You're absolutely right. That could definitely hinder this necessary transformation into the battery electric world.
You said at the beginning that battery electric is the future, that you're confident about that the automakers see that as well. Why are you so confident about that? Why is that when there's such a slow take-up? How do we know that batteries are really the future? is it just because of the climate goals, or is it from a business sense as well that these cars will break through?
It's the most efficient technology. If we observe the history of the automotive industry, we see that there were not many phases where we had overlapping technologies, where we had more than two technologies in play. And so I'm very confident that car manufacturers do not want to have 2 or 3 technologies in parallel. So at the end, they want to have one technology. And I think that economies of scale, especially in battery production, will reduce the prices, especially for batteries, long-term significantly. So I think there's no other way than battery electric vehicles.
You talked about this return, in some sense, to combustion engines being a win for jobs and for industry, because that's where Germany in particular is competitive. But isn't it true that they're less competitive in general across all industries right now? And whether that's a combustion engine or an electric motor, just given the cost of labor, the cost of everything, in other words, this won't suddenly make the German car companies more competitive again, will it?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Germany is suffering a lot of fundamental issues, over regulations, high labor costs, very high social standards. And I think that need to be done in parallel, not only save the auto industry, but really reinvent Germany from scratch, basically. Chancellor Merz tries to go that path, but he's in a coalition with Social Democrats, so he has to find compromises. That will be a tough ride to reinvent Germany, but your general observation is definitely right.
Andreas, can we say that the best days, the high water mark of the German car industry is behind it now?
Yes, for the moment, I fully agree. But hopefully, this crisis will help the German car industry to reinvent themselves. It is a very strong industry. They have very knowledgeable people, brilliant engineers. All they need is a push to go to this crisis and come out much stronger than before. So I'm pretty optimistic. This industry will not go down, but it has to go through a fundamental crisis. But at the end of the day, I hope it will come back much stronger.
All right, that's Andreas Herrmann at St. Gallen University in Zurich. Andreas, thank you so much.